Hi, welcome to my channel. Um, I thought I'd do a little intro over here um, as to what I'm up to. I'm recently retired as a software engineer. Due to the COVID-19, I decided to take some earlier retirement, and in order to keep active and get back to my roots, I decided to get back into electronics. Originally, my schooling was in electronics, and the first about 4 years or so of my career, I worked as a um, electronics technician and then electronics engineer. Um, but early in the 80s, 83, 84, thereabouts, um, it was obvious that software development was actually more lucrative at that time, and it was a great need for people to develop software. So and I was actually asked the company I was working for if I could help out with creating some custom software because they sold computer systems and they needed software to be sold with them. And in those days, the computer systems, in fact, it was CP/M and NP/M. Then finally, a few years later, MS-DOS came along and PC-DOS, and then of course it went to Windows. And I followed that stream all along, and I developed software for Windows and since the 90s. And anyway, but my original interest was in electronics, and I decided to get back to that as I'm retired. And I thought, what better way to do that through a YouTube channel to show um, what that involves, how my little lab, I had equipment from my early days, but it's kind of for years, it was not really used and put in storage. So now I'm getting back into it. So my experience might be of interest to some people, and also might even get some hints as to what I might be doing wrong. Who knows? So here goes. So this is my little work area. It's way too small, but I don't have much space. Way it goes. So first of all, um, over here, I find that nowadays there is a need for microscopes. See, I've got this little circuit sitting there that is way too small to see, and I wanted to find out what that little component was, and it's got a code on there. Still can't find it though, but that's what that's used for. It's sitting on my desk so I can aim it at things. Um, Over here, I've actually got an old, that little white box is not, there's an old bridge. I will be covering that in some other videos that um, you can test, resistance, capacitance, and inductance with, because in the old days, you didn't have, like today, electronic devices and meters that can actually LCR meters that can actually do that. I have a grid, so-called dip meter. It used to be a grid dip meter in the old days. I did have an amateur radio license years ago in fact in Australia, and I like to have one of these dip meters around. Maybe because I'm old school, I don't know, but you can test circuits with it to see what they're resonant to and so on. On top of that is sitting my a more recent acquisition, it's a milliohm meter. We'll be featuring that in some videos. Over here, this is a signal generator, which is actually my final project when I went to college in studying electronics, electronic engineering. Well, you had to do a project, and so this is what I made, and that thing it's still going, and I use it. It is let me see now, 20, 40, 42 years old, thereabouts. And over here underneath this sticker is a rather useless, it was cheap, I bought it from China. There's supposed to be a frequency counter, but it is quirky, and unless you know the frequency that you're looking for, sometimes it comes back with the wrong value. It's not a good one. This one here I've had for like over 40 years. It's a Jason Musin. This is when I was left over from when I was an amateur radio guy, and it's a frequency counter, and the thing is still going strong. It goes up to 500 megahertz, and if I want to test some frequencies, that's the go-to device for me. A more recent acquisition is this spectrum analyzer from Sigland, however you pronounce that, and there is a signal generator here, which works okay. It's sort of a Chinese version, and this is my desktop multimeter that I use all the time. I prefer having a desktop one, and I particularly look for multimeters with buttons on there. I hate those old-fashioned things with rotary controls on them, because you always have to go click, 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 you know, to get to something. Drives me crazy, don't like it. This one here, you can just push the button if you want to see diodes or millivolts or whatever. You just go boop, and it's there. It works well. In fact, that there's stuff here, Vichy, that I've got a couple more devices from them. That Milliometer, for instance, is the same brand. They seem to be working well, so I keep an eye on that. Got some old power supplies there, one I made myself. Here is the oscilloscopes. This is a more recent acquisition. I bought a couple of years ago. I bought this when I was trying to build my lab back up while I was still working, and I should have really bought the 4-channel one, but I got the 2-channel one. I have an older, probably 20 years old, a simple CRT analog version of oscilloscope, and you know, I like that sometimes better. It's easier to pick up signals with that. The digital ones can be quirky sometimes. Quite often there's nothing on the screen, and I'll have to go to auto setup to make it display stuff. But other than that, of course, the digital ones, they show you frequency, and you can do Fourier transforms on them and stuff, so they do have their uses for sure. I have up here the big white thing there is actually an old computer power supply, and I completely recycled stuff. The case I made up, I bent out of an old PC case, and as you can see, all the little on the front, all the little terminals are all different because I went to my junk box, and this is a secondary power supply that I can use. I hardly ever do because I have over here, this is an older power supply that I have. It's kind of analog, but maybe I should dip down a little bit so you can see things better. And right now it is heating up my tea. I've got a little heater underneath there. This here is a spot welder. The focusing on this Logitech Brio cam is not wonderful, but I guess you can see it. It came with a soldering iron, but I never used that because I have much better soldering stations. But the spot welder, I originally bought one of those little battery powered things, and the one I got, some apparently worked, but the one I got was terrible. It actually blew up, so I bought this instead. This one actually has a little pedal with it, so you can activate it with your foot. When you connect it to the output, it comes with a wand with a cable, but normally you would put the battery up here and you just push it up, and there is a spring-loaded thing on the top that actually adjusts the pressure if you want, and you can set it for 4 pulses, 6 pulses, 8 pulses, and this is the intensity of the pulses, and so I use this for spot welding battery packs and things like that. Interesting enough though, this originally was made as a 220 volt, 240 volt version, and I think that one would probably be better in countries that have a better voltage than in the United States. But this is the 110 volt one, and when I first plugged it in, I had a 20 amp circuit breaker, and it went poof, and the circuit breakers cut out. So I have since put in a 30 amp circuit breaker, but I'm aware that that's not going to stay that way. I'm going to run in my workshop in the garage. I will also do some metal working and woodworking and so on. I put in a 240 volts circuit as part of the equipment that I've got there, but I also have a 50 amp 120 volt outlet there, and I'm going to run that through the 30 amp circuit breaker just to service this thing soon. Anyway, this here is my power supply, which I'm very fond of. This one here is got a nice OLED display on it, and it has some really nice features. It's actually a 10 amp 30 volt power supply, and one of the features I look for in power supplies is that it has a separate on and off button, so you can actually, right now it's off, it's red. If you push it, it's on, it goes green. And you can separately set the voltage. You can set the maximum current that it will output, but it also has an over voltage protection, so you can set that to some sort of voltage, and if you turn it on, it will switch off if it reaches that voltage. And over current protection as well. If it tries to draw more than a certain amount, then it'll also turn the circuit off, which I sometimes use for charging battery packs, because I can set it for let's say it's a lithium ion cell. I could set it for 7.4 volts. Sorry, that's for two. For one, 4.2 volts. Sorry, I'm just messing this up. Then I can limit the current. Let's say I only wanted to draw half an amp, but if it reaches a certain voltage when it's fully charged, I can set the voltage there, and it'll just turn off when it's fully charged. Stuff like that. So this is a nice power supply I'm really fond of. Thinking of buying another one. Then there are my little soldering stations. I've got a video coming up actually building this one. They are sold as kits on AliExpress. Let me see if I can get this to get a bit closer. Come on. This camera, you know, is like you have to coax it into focusing sometimes. Like that. Put it up close and make your hand. It's Logitech stuff. It's kind of, I've not been happy with any of their stuff recently. Anyway, this is these are based on the T12 soldering tips, and originally introduced by Hakko, I believe. I got two of them. I made up a little stand here which holds two soldering irons, so I can put a bigger tip in one and a smaller tip in the other. But the feature of these things is that you can pull the tips out really easy and replace them anyway. I also have this wired soldering station, which comes with a standard soldering iron, which tips are not easy to replace on. I don't tend to use that. I tend to use the other guys for soldering. But it has hot air, and it also has a wand behind the soldering iron there for sucking the solder, desoldering. Again, I don't tend to use that as often because it's a pain to clean out the solder out of that wand. It's got like a little filter in there and stuff, and I'm lazy, so I've got other devices. And up top here I have a signal generator which actually goes into the radio frequency. These things have been around forever, kind of analog, and people company's still making them. I think they've been around since at least the 90s. So I'll use that when I want radio frequency signals injected in my circuits. And this over here is my microscope. Because this is a webcam here that has nothing to do with the microscope. I'll be turning that on soon. Right now I have a special lens on it, so it can show more, but it can go right into detail. You know, when you're soldering those tiny little SMD components, you can't do without that. And of course I have a screen there, and I got a computer hidden underneath the desk that is actually got this little keyboard over here and a mouse and so on, so I can work with that as well. So that's kind of my setup here. So now I'm going to pause for a sec, and then we're going to switch cameras and we'll discuss a few other things. Right, back again. So what I've been doing is, because you know, when you are retired you have limited funds, so I've been buying stuff mostly from China, some from Amazon, some from Banggood, some from even Wish.com, but mostly AliExpress, and which has been an experience, kind of interesting. I wanted a device to charge USB devices, but also that would display me the voltage and the current and so on that it's drawing. And I found this thing online that you can see on the screen right now. So I bought this, and when it came, I actually didn't use it straight away, and actually put it aside for, I don't know, a month or so till I actually got to it. When I actually went to it, I found out that the port, the first port, USB 1, let me switch cameras here. You're looking at it here. This port here wasn't working. All the others were. So I opened it up, and what I found was, first of all, the quality of the manufacturer is questionable. The whole thing here is glued in with some sort of glue. So good luck if the power supply ever fails to try to get that out and to see if you can fix it. But the actual controlling stuff, I think I'm gonna switch cameras here. So I have now actually resoldered these leads over here. See, that's the incoming power. The black and the red leads. When I first opened that up, I found out that the red lead was actually soldered to here instead of its proper input, which is actually here. You know, there's a hole for it. And the black lead was actually soldered to these two capacitors here. Now, why on earth they would do that, I have no idea. Is it easier to do that than to put it in the proper position? So I put them in the right place, and I found that, let me see now where this thing is sitting. Oh yeah, here. Each USB port has one of these little chips here that actually controls the I wonder if you can see the numbers on there. That controls the let me see if I can. No, that'll do it. That controls the you know, it negotiates the power output and so on for these ports. And I've looked everywhere for these little chips. I can't find them anywhere. I don't know what they are exactly, but I couldn't find anyone selling them either. So what I had to do was, in order to make this port work, I actually put a little, this is a little fuse that I put on there. So now, of course, it doesn't have the little chip to negotiate the power, but at least that port works again. And interestingly enough, the power does go through a sense resistor, and the little microcontroller on this recognizes the amount of current it's flowing, so it kind of still shows up on the display, but it's always like probably 500 milliamps or something that it seems to output by default, which is okay. I just need to remember, that port 1 is I can plug in. I've got lots of low power devices that I can use it for. But that's been my experience with Chinese stuff. When now some of the things that I have actually bought have been just fine. So you've got to be aware. Let me put this back together again. So here's a typical example of some traps if you are shopping on AliExpress, for instance, and the others are like that as well. So here you will see a hot air station. Let's say you're looking for a hot air station, 4369 it says. So then when you go there, where is it? Oh, it's on a separate window here. When you go there, this comes up. So the seller put the cheapest thing that they are selling for it. This is it's all Chinese. You can't even read it, but this is probably the heating unit or something that's on the hot air gun. But when you click on the actual device, suddenly it is $232.02, and they will charge $118 shipping. So what do you got, like $350 or something like that? But then when you look at elsewhere on the internet, on the AliExpress, you'll find the exact same thing here, and they actually want, you got free shipping. They want a little bit less than $200 for it, and it is going to be $150 cheaper. So you really have to be careful when you're shopping on AliExpress. And do you think I would buy something from a seller that actually advertises something for a ridiculously cheap price? Then you go there and it's like a little screw or something like that. Then you click on the actual device and then it's like, $100 or something like that. I mean, especially when it's all got Chinese on there like the other one. Good luck trying to contact them if you've got a query or something about the actual purchase. So these are the things you've got to watch out for when you go to buy stuff from China as well. Here's an interesting example too, like when you buy stuff from China. I ordered this soldering iron kit, and indeed I've got a video coming up to show. I bought this thing elsewhere eventually and put it together. I'll have a video coming putting this thing together and see what it's like. Anyway, I ordered this and waited for a month. It took ages to get here, maybe 6 weeks or something, and finally a package arrived in the mail, and what actually came was not a soldering iron. It was I'll show you what came. I'll switch cameras here. A bunch of brightly colored grommets. And so I went to AliExpress and complained, and a bunch of back and forths. I had to prove, had to make a picture of the pouch and what the weight of it was. So they finally agreed that it was wrong, and they actually gave me my money back, and I ended up buying this thing elsewhere. But that's what happens. Now pretty much Banggood and AliExpress and even Wish.com, which is the most suspect sort of place to buy stuff, they are pretty good at returning your money if you complain something is not right. So that's okay, but this is what happens. So and I bought a bunch of other stuff. I'll be covering some of these things on this channel. it'll be interesting to see what I get, and with what is good and what is not so good. And that's what we'll be dealing with over the next few videos. So this is all I've got right now, and until next time.